Good day, everyone. In today's micro lecture, I'm going to be taking you through an introduction to supply chain strategy, both lean and agile. Over the course of the micro lecture, we'll talk about the peculiarities around supply chain strategy and what it means for the concepts of lean and agile. So, in this topic, we look at the various logistics strategies and supply chain strategies that companies employ. As you'll be reading through the materials, you will find that strategy itself, when it comes to logistics and the supply chain, is not divorced from a firm's strategy, but rather they are complementary. So, therefore, we first have to look at a firm's strategy and then examine the relationship that it has when it comes to our supply chain strategy. The field of strategy itself is both wide, fascinating, and varied, and it is of crucial importance to an organization. Strategy can best be described as trying to plan for an uncertain future in accordance with expectations from your stakeholders, both internal as well as external. This week, we view logistics strategy and supply chain strategy as one in the same and together. When it comes to developing strategy, there are various schools of thought. Strategy itself is a field of study by itself. A usual starting point is working top down, first considering your wider corporate strategy and its overall objectives, and then working from there to get your business unit strategies. There have been various criticisms of the top down strategy. First and foremost, is that it ignores the practicality of strategy implementation more than it does the planning process. With the top down perspective of strategy, we start with corporate strategy, filter down to the business unit, and then lastly to the functional levels themselves. Like I said, not everyone agrees that this is the best way to formulate strategy, and there are two questions that typically arise. Firstly, it doesn't allow for a bottom up perspective. And in the case of supply chain management, it assumes that these functions are just the same as all the other functions. You're grouped together with all the other functional areas in exactly the same way. So there's an increasing view that what we know about strategy is still emergent, it's still developing because of relative uncertainty and changes in the environment. For strategies that are fluid and have to evolve. Therefore, it is more prudent to take what we call a holistic view of logistics and supply chain strategy formulation, looking at your corporate strategy, your business strategies, and each of the functional strategies, but more importantly, the developments and the information has to flow in both directions. You have to receive information from your function level to inform what we're doing to make sure that our strategy is indeed aligned to the expected outcome. The focus that we will take for this week's lesson. In terms of strategy formula, it's important that an organization monitors implementation of its own strategy and makes changes wherever they might be needed. Principal strategies have emerged in recent decades: lean and agile. And before we start looking at both lean and agile in detail, we have to first look at the differences between value chains and supply chains because they will in turn inform the lean and agile perspectives and strategies when it comes to supply chain management. The concept of the value chain itself was developed by Michael Porter in the 1980s. You may recall Michael Porter and Porter's Five Forces model. How is it different from a supply chain? Well, the answer is simple and complex at the same time. Supply chains look at material flows moving downstream from the source, from the supplier, from the upstream to the customer. The value chain is more focused on the flows of value, meaning in the opposite direction. The end customer is the source of value, indicating what they need, and everyone else upstream performs the activities for that end customer. The supply chain becomes the value chain when all of these firms become connected to each other, when value is co-created, when value is not trying, you're not trying to create value in absence of consulting with everyone in your supply chain. So these days, we find that the lines are blurred between supply chains and value chains. It's often very difficult to separate or decouple both of these. And of course, decoupling is a concept we're going to talk about in a lot more detail in the next micro lecture. Thank you.